Are you tired of watching shows that only give you general social media theory and expect you to figure out how to apply it to your own industry? Join us for this week's episode of Social Chatter, the industry's longest running social media marketing news talk show. Not only will you learn the latest breaking news, but you'll also gain practical advice on how to apply it. Now here's your host, Christian Karasevich.
Welcome everyone to Social Chatter, your weekly social media marketing news talk show. This is episode 281 with myself, Jem Fuhs. Let me make sure I point in the right direction there. Jem Fuhs. And this week's guest is a colleague of mine, Julie Riley. She's the social media manager at StreamYard, who also powers our show. So we have a lot of topics we're going to discuss with you this week, a lot of really good social media news updates, especially if you're a business or an influencer or a creator and you want to monetize your efforts. We're going to be talking about Twitter super follows, Instagram Live rooms, as well as a new update from Twitter in terms of shopping and e-commerce. So Jem, it's good to have you back joining us again for yet another episode.
Yeah, great to see you. Great to know that Julie's coming on. We've been friends for a few years now. She's a great person and glad to see she's part of Team StreamYard.
Definitely. Yeah. So let's go and bring Julie on. We're going to kick things off. Got a lot to talk about, but Julie, do us a favor. Tell us who you are and a little bit about yourself.
Me. There you go. I was like, I'm muted.
There you go. All right, go ahead. Yes.
Happy Thursday. So I am Julie Riley. I am the social media manager for StreamYard. I have been in digital marketing since 2007, which is crazy if you think about that, because that is like the very, early wild, wild west days of digital marketing. I actually got started on the e-commerce side of things, launching an e-commerce program for a Harley-Davidson dealership here in Wichita, Kansas. And kind of just evolved from there into some other avenues that led me into social media and fell in love with the social media side of digital marketing and really how to put your business out there and be seen and heard and grow your communities and your followings.
Fantastic. By the way, I didn't know that you literally started right within the same time time frame I did, actually. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. And I didn't realize you actually had worked with at Harley Davidson at that point as well. That's actually really good to know because I've got some good friends that own some Harley dealerships. So,
awesome.
So that's actually really neat to learn that about you. Awesome.
Yeah. I was with Harley for about 4 years. Yeah. About 4 years.
Very cool. Yeah. And I know working in social, if you're an entrepreneur or a solopreneur, I know that it's very different than working with a major company or a major brand. There's always, there's a lot of differences there, I guess. You maybe want to share just what a couple of those differences are, maybe that, so that people don't like say, hey, you know what? Oh, I'm going to copy what this brand is doing, but this brand is massive, for example.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
So, I've worked for major brands. I've worked for myself. I've owned an agency. So I've kind of hit all of the avenues there. And each one of those has their differences. The major brands are able to speak to a very large audience and really put forth the branding, the brand voice, but they're speaking as the company. They're not speaking as themselves. So when you're a solopreneur, you're able to speak as you. You're really able to put your thoughts and your opinions into what you're saying and build your following based off of the people who are resonating with you, not with a product. And when you're the agency, you're speaking for all of your clients. And so then I like to say you're just like bipolar and you don't know who you're speaking as that day because you're going to put on 9 million different voices and talk to everybody.
Yeah. And I remember back in the day when we were using a lot of social media management dashboards before they had evolved. That was a big challenge for a lot of people. They'd be logged into the wrong account. There wouldn't be as many team options, as you could say. And you had a lot of people that would accidentally tweet from, the brand account as themselves and whatnot. So
that was always my biggest fear was that, like double checking and, oh God, did it go to the right place?
Yeah, it was, as you mentioned, it was definitely the Wild West back then. And I know things have evolved quite a bit. So Jem, do you want to kick things off? What topic do we want to start with today?
Yeah, let's start out with Twitter's, I guess you could say, latest thing is they're looking at paid super follows to let you charge for tweets. That's pretty fascinating.
This is actually, yeah. So how does this work?
Well, I think what's happened, I mean, I will say that Twitter over the last, I'd say year has really, it's like they woke up and said, hey, if we don't start doing some things to keep ourselves relevant, we're going to, kind of go the way as some other social platforms have in the past. And so, you've got things like Patreon, you've got, Buy Me a Coffee, you've got YouTube now with, yeah, I guess they call it super chats, where people are actually able to pay to have their chats highlighted. So
Mhm.
now Twitter is coming up with a way for, Twitter, I guess you could say, users in general to have an ability to create their own, in a sense, membership where, like, if you pay, you're going to get access to special content. So it's interesting, and of course, Twitter will get a cut of this from the user, so it becomes a revenue stream. So I'm curious as to how this would work, because I think is it going to be only tweets, right? So you're going to pay for getting up to an additional 280 characters that you don't put on your Twitter feed. I mean, Julie, what do you think?
I think it's going to be interesting to see how this evolves and really how it comes out. Because I know they said this is really just in the talking stages at the moment, that it's on their roadmap. There isn't a timeline. But I think the way you're going to be able to view this is kind of like over on Facebook. You've got your Facebook pages and you've got your Facebook groups. And your groups are really where you're building those communities, and you're able to kind of have those like membership type communities. And so that's what I think you're going to kind of look at this as, is a membership type community where you're going to be able to put out more information and more content to select people. So whether you just want to call them your super fans or you want to have a membership type following, that's where you can start to deliver that key news and information to those people that are paying.
Right. And they also did add, to your point about communities, that in this article, even though the headline is about you know the super, charging for these tweets, is actually talking about them creating groups and communities. I mean, you can already create kind of the DM group where you can have a group of people, and I'm in a couple of those where I chat with the like the Twitter Smarter team and things like that. So I think this is interesting because Facebook has had groups for a long time, and in some aspects, I think that's probably the one thing that maybe keeps some people on Facebook right now, because we know they've had a lot of challenges. But groups, I think, has been where a lot of engagement happens on Facebook. So I'd be curious to see too how that possibly develops, because you could also, they might have almost like communities based on topics they talked about as well in the article
Yeah.
from The Verge. So I think it's fascinating. Right? Twitter is like, if you've been asleep, Twitter's doing some stuff, and I know Spaces just, I know it didn't make it into today's show, but Spaces is now available on Android.
Actually, we could talk about that one actually briefly right after this if you want to.
Yeah.
I would say this. I mean, the fact that you can charge people, I mean, for the bonus content, if that's tweets or, does it become fleets or what does it become? I'm not really sure yet.
Right.
But, here's the thing. I think that this is actually sort of a good thing in a way. One great thing about Twitter is that you don't have to be logged into the platform necessarily. Whereas on Facebook, everything is contained in this walled garden, and so getting things on Twitter, like you do get the chance for some more exposure. I think the other thing, though, they're going to have to really figure out how to shake is just the stigma that Twitter's a bunch of spam. I know, Jem, I know how much you love Twitter. I think there's a lot of value in Twitter, but it's getting people outside that stigma, to realize that, hey, you know what, you can actually get a lot of things done. Anything else you want to add about this whole Twitter super follows feature?
I think it's just going to be another place that content creators can start to look at that as an avenue. It's one of those where you need to say, is my audience spending more time on Twitter? So is it more pertinent for me to, then go down this avenue as a content creator to create these communities and these, super chats?
Right. And here's the thing too. I think that we always talk about the algorithm, but when you think of Twitter, like if I create a list and you
Mhm.
guys are in my list, I will see every piece of content you put out.
Mhm.
It's not a question of, "Oh, I didn't see that." You maybe didn't see it if you're looking at your main feed because it just
Right.
moves so fast.
Mhm.
That's one of the things I think that sometimes people, forget about Twitter is the fact that if I put you in a list, I can see everything. I basically can keep up with you, right?
Yeah.
The other thing is Twitter doesn't punish people for, putting links in and taking them off the platform, at least not at this point. So that's where, whether it's like taking people to watch your YouTube videos or, you know, giving people a link to, to sign up for StreamYard, they're fine with that. And that's one of the things that the other platforms don't do. Like we don't want you to leave our platform. So that's, I think, where this could be very interesting, as well as how this all gets incorporated together. So I think that's some of the things that we sometimes forget about Twitter.
And I love the list feature. And here's the thing. And Julie, maybe you have a quick tip for viewers. So, the biggest problem with Twitter list is that they've always been somewhat inaccessible to people. So, and I mean that from the standpoint of they've been buried pretty much in the menu. Um, the other thing, though, is that people at some point, they have followed so many people and then they've either just dumped everybody into a list or they've not actually taken the time to do that. Do you have maybe some tips on using Twitter list? Like maybe some tips to help them save time adding people to a list?
Yeah. So, I think that I don't know necessarily about saving time on adding them, but it's taking the time to create those lists of what you need to follow. So, whether it's for a conference, whether it's for, people with a like interest, all of your social media marketers in a list for, my kind of world, and utilizing it, because it doesn't do you any good if you're not utilizing it. But you are going to have to take that time to set them up. But once they're set up, they're golden. They are worth their weight in gold, and they make Twitter so much more usable and easier to manage the content that you're seeing. So you're not getting lost in all of the other stuff.
Awesome. Great advice.
Yeah, and since we kind of brought it up earlier too, Twitter Spaces. In fact, if you see my profile right now, if you want to call it the code to let people know you're using Twitter Spaces is to now put a purple dot in your name on your profile. So if you're all of a sudden said, what are all these purple circles people have on their profile? These are people that either have access to Twitter Spaces or are actively using it. Now, what's interesting too is that you actually more people probably have access to it than they realize. It's just a matter of when you're attempting to tweet, you hold down the little, looks like I guess it's a bird feather, we'll call it. If you hold it down, you will see it probably pop up where you have spaces. You can tweet a GIF or you can just start a tweet, but that's only on mobile. I think that's one of the and by that meaning on your phone, like it doesn't work on the iPad app of Twitter. That's
Mhm.
one thing I'd like to see change. But I was in a space yesterday with making to saying talking, the FOMO creator, Chocolate Johnny jumped in, and the audio quality was really good. They do have reactions, and now that it's available to Android users, they basically, if you want to call it, beat Clubhouse to that next step. So now the question becomes with Spaces, are the people that were waiting to get on Clubhouse, are they going to be like, yeah, you know what? Why do I need to go to another audio platform, when I've already got, a network of 300 plus million people that I can talk to? So it's interesting because I think now you're going to have the Clubhouse versus Twitter Spaces, but as we know, Facebook as well. There's been talks of them coming out with an audio only app, and but I don't know. I know there's people that you know whatever you want to call it, beat up on Twitter. But I've always felt like Twitter is one of the most open platforms. It's very, I can connect or follow anyone. It's not like I have to friend request you or send you a connection request. And
Mhm.
it's really easy to get rid of spammers. You just block them and then you no longer
Yep.
see their stuff. So that's, I think, one of the other things that, so I think sometimes, and Julie kind of hit on it earlier, it's kind of like you need to curate your feed. You need to curate who you follow. If you don't like, it's like people would talk about, not just to briefly talk about politics. I just didn't follow the stuff, right?
Right.
If I don't want to
Mhm.
see it, I don't see it. And I think that's too was always the power in lists. It's like, look, if you don't want to see a bunch of garbage, just go to your list where you see, the topics or the people that you want to interact with, and it's really easy to do once you get the hang of it.
So, Jem, do you happen to have? I don't know if you happen to have screenshot, or if you happen to have your mobile app handy. I don't know if we can maybe pull up like how to access Twitter Stories, or sorry, Twitter Stories. How to access Twitter Spaces. I know I just tried it on my mobile phone and have a few accounts, and I don't have it on the Twitter app.
All right,
I don't know if you might
I have
happen
to
to have it
do a
handy.
couple things real quick, but I can in a second. I'm going to have to
Sure.
launch a tool so I can do a screen share. I won't say what the name of it is.
And to answer Laura Williams's question, by the way, she's asking, you can't tweet from a laptop, right? So the answer is you can tweet from a laptop, but you can't use Twitter Spaces from
or
a laptop.
Fleets, right?
Or
It's
Fleets,
all
yeah.
Yep.
Julie, what do you think about this feature? I know you and I have debated Clubhouse quite a bit. Do you think that now that Twitter is starting to really get some traction here, do you think that people are going to, it's almost like the nightclub effect. Like somebody goes to that one nightclub or that one restaurant, and hey, it's really popular, and then they can't get in, and then someone else opens one, and then they jump over to that line. What do you think?
Well, I think it's kind of funny that now I can get into one that all of the people were all about their FOMO and couldn't get in, and now I can't get into the other. I'm like, hey, where's my pass over here? But it's one of those where, while yes, Clubhouse has been around now for a few months. Actually, it's been around for almost a year, but really gained its traction within the last few months. But that people are starting to kind of grow their following over there. But the thing is over in Twitter, I already have my following. So then I'm not having to grow my following from scratch. I would much rather be over on Twitter Spaces than on Clubhouse, because it's a following that's already existing. And so I'm not having to start from scratch. And so that's my kind of take on it, is I would really rather be on a platform I'm already on versus having another app, another notification, because quite frankly, Clubhouse notifications are out of control. I had to shut those off. Those are nuts. So I'm already getting the Twitter notifications. So why not keep within one set of notifications, one set of following that I already have built?
Fantastic. So quick question. If I'm a business, and let's do two scenarios here. So if I'm a business, and Jem, I'm going to bring your example up here in a second. If I'm a business and I am not on Clubhouse yet, but I've been, considering doing that, should I move over to Twitter Spaces?
I think you need to test. You need to, try out Twitter Spaces. You need to try out Clubhouse, and you need to see which one starts gaining traction for your business, because it may be that you're hitting a whole audience that you've never reached over on Clubhouse and are able to talk to people that had no idea who you were, because that is such a fresh new audience. However, it may also be the thing that you get over there and you're just not gaining that traction. So now you need to look over at Twitter Spaces, where you already have your following built, where you already have that momentum, and now you can build on that foundation you already have. So it's all about testing, and that's everything with social media. Is you're going to have to test the waters and see what's going to work for your business, because what's going to work for my business isn't necessarily the same as what's going to work for yours.
Good point. So here I'm going to go and bring on Jem. Jem has his Twitter app here, and so do me a favor, Jem. Show our viewers, how does this work?
Okay, so if you'll see in the bottom right corner, we've got the little tweet thing. So I'm going to hold it, and as you see, it now pops up 3 different options. And so the bottom one, which looks like I don't know if you want to call it like a funny looking diamond or like a baseball base with dots on it. When I tap that, I now enter Spaces, and I can choose if I want everyone to be able to speak, and you can change this. I can say only people that I follow. So then when I start my space, it starts to connect me, and I know there's a way in here I can actually name it. Let's see.
And while you're doing that, one question I have about Spaces. So you know how Clubhouse has the whole, audio policy where they don't want you to record the audio. How does Twitter Spaces how does this work?
I don't know that it's actually set it. So I'm going to hit test. I'll hit done here. So I'm actually in Spaces right now. And so if people were to start to come in, they would actually, see that. Now, I don't know if it'll show it on my thing at the moment, but it may at some point where the fleets thing is my
It turns purple. Yes.
it'll turn purple, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't know if it's going to turn purple on us, and I don't necessarily want a bunch of people to jump in. But let me show you some of the things you can do. You do have reactions, so even people in the audience that are not speakers, this is a difference from Clubhouse, can leave these 5. They've got 5 reactions right now. It also has transcription of what people are saying that transcribes during the audio. So yeah, so there's Christians in there right now. And so if I hit the 100, you can see that. And so you can see we've started this space. Of course, I don't know if we would end up with echo feedback, but is that simple? And, and then you guys are able to, to talk if you wanted to talk. And then once you're done with the space, and then the other thing over here is you can invite people by direct message. You can actually share this space as a tweet, or you can copy the link and send it out maybe on other platforms if someone's not on their Twitter at the moment. So it's really a nice way to connect with people, right? We got Alberto jumping in here temporarily, I guess, and waving hello. And so is that simple to get started. So you may have it. You got to remember, hold down the little what do you call it, the feather.
Yeah.
And you may find that you have it. So so we'll jump out of here.
Definitely.
And end the space. And so there's your Spaces lesson for today. And
that's very cool, actually.
And so I think one of the things that we forget about is that, and Julie hit on this, the fact that you already have your community on Twitter. And so as an example, Madeline Scalar does the Twitter Smarter Chat. She now at 5 p.m. Eastern is doing a Twitter space with the guest, if the guest can make it, and the community. So we can have an audio conversation about the Twitter chat that went on earlier. Even something like a live stream, right? You could potentially have like the after party, if you want to call it, where all the people that were watching, hey, come on over to Twitter Spaces and let's talk about the show and what did you like, maybe what you didn't like, or get a chance to talk to the guest, because now the guest could still do it and doesn't have to be quote unquote camera ready. And I think it just helps really build that community. But I don't have to go, get a bunch of followers or, oh, you got to go follow me hit me up in the DMs, all that stuff. So I think what I think happens with these audio only platforms right now is it's almost overwhelming, right? You've got people that are living on Clubhouse, they're starting clubs and doing all this stuff. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I think that you got to kind of decide where you're going to focus your time. So for me, it's okay, if I were to say, all right, every week at this time, I'm just going to get on Twitter Spaces, if people start to know, because or people that are on Twitter already, it's oh, let me check this out, right? Because you can tweet it out and you can, like you saw, I could set what the topic's going to be about. So are you interested? Are you not? So I think I like the function. I tell you what I love about it right now is I love the fact that even if I'm not a speaker, right, I don't have to get pulled onto the stage, I can react to what's being said. And in a sense, I'm giving the speaker's feedback, right? Where on Clubhouse, you have to tap the mic to let them know that you're, I guess, clapping. So, yeah, so that's what I think. I just think it's a great idea by Twitter. They've already got a huge community. I've already got a decent following as the two of you do. So it's I don't have to start over. And it's I don't know, and sometimes on Clubhouse, you don't even know who the people are because they haven't put a bio in.
Yep.
And you're do I want to follow this person? And I think the argument of oh, well, where people are making deals on Clubhouse and this, that, and the other. It's like, well, they could do it on Twitter now as well. They just got to take the time. It's
Yeah.
the same, same steps. I mean, what do you think, Julie?
I agree completely. And I think the reactions and the transcription are two huge things that are setting them apart. Because the reactions are, I don't like them on Clubhouse. The having to tap my screen to clap, and I'm literally, then having to make sure I'm watching it too to go, did I turn the microphone back off? Because I don't want the microphone on at that point because I'm not the speaker. And if you're a listener, you can't make a reaction at all. You're literally just listening. It's only the other speakers that are on the stage that can make a reaction. So being able to have those reactions, to be able to show your support, and as a speaker, that's useful because then you know that people are reacting and getting something out of what you're saying, or maybe you need to move on to another topic because it's just, crickets chirping in the background with silence. And so I think that's going to be big. And then the other thing with the transcription, being able to get that to hit a wider audience, to have some of that where we can now pull in people who may have, hearing difficulties and being able to still be a part of listening to the conversations.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And I think that's a big thing that we in general in the social media space need to consider is accessibility.
Yes.
I know a few weeks ago, Madeline had a guest on and on Twitter, and part of it was like with hashtags, what we call it camel case, right? That you don't understand that these screen readers, if you don't capitalize within your hashtags, it doesn't always, it gets lost in translation. So I think it's those little practices that can really help make it more inclusive for those people that have accessibility challenges.
And to that point, by the way, just a quick point here. You do have to. Is that me, by the way? I think that's me. Yeah, actually, sorry guys. I was over here having a little FOMO with Twitter Spaces here, trying to see if I join other people's spaces that are popping up, do I get access to it? Because I unfortunately don't have it yet, but I do have the audio feature. But what I wanted to get at was that accessibility is extremely important, and as a business owner, you may not think it's important, but you actually can. I'm just going to say this because I have friends that have had this happen. Like, you can get fined if your website, for example, is not accessible to people. It doesn't matter that like you didn't have the feature, or you don't have the the customers or whatever. Like, you do need to make your websites accessible. If you don't, people do go after people for that sort of thing. Unfortunately, so try and make your website more accessible, so that you can be more inclusive. But I like this feature. I gotta say, I'm really liking the I like just the fact that I don't have to have a second app to manage. I love though the point that Julie made, and it's the fact, or was it Julie or Jem? The fact that if I already have an audience built, then I can tap right into them. I mean, I love that. So I don't have to go through the struggles that most people do with social media, which is they start to join, they go to join, and they have no audience, they have no following, they have no community. It's really hard to build off of that. It's very demoralizing if you don't have the audience. So I love the fact that that's out there. This is a big win for me. I would say.
Well, and think about it. If you really wanted to, as an example, not to say that they'll show up, but and just like I realized it was Julie because she works with StreamYard, but you could invite brands to be a part of your space if they're on Twitter, right? You could actually sit there like, we're going to complain about Google My Business, and we're going to invite Google My Business to come on. Hey, we gave you a chance to defend yourselves, and you chose not to.
No, and I love that. I think I'm gonna have to pull out my old Android phone. That is like, I think that thing's 5 years old. It's been sitting in a box, and see if I can plug it in and if it has any life, and if I'll get Twitter Spaces on that one. So I'm gonna have to check that out later today.
Yeah, so Twitter Spaces now available for Android in beta, right, Jim?
Yes. I kind of feel like it's still really in beta anyway. They just have now made it more available. Now, of course, I put in for this like back in January, Winnie's son had shared a form that we could, and so all of a sudden one day is like, hey, you've got Spaces. It's like, woohoo, all right. So, but I am pretty active on Twitter, so that maybe, and I had participated in a couple of Spaces before I got access to it. So I don't know if that helped, but Yeah,
Very
definitely,
well could.
definitely keep. I think just if you start doing the spaces, I think they'll see that and they might give you access if you don't right now.
So let's move to. We have time for two more topics, Jim.
I think so.
Okay,
Julie
so we're
does.
Yeah.
third topic. What are we going to talk about?
Well, let's talk about Instagram. Has got a new feature.
Okay.
They're calling it what, live rooms, and you can have up to 4 people live.
Hmm.
I think it's interesting, but I will say my one complaint is going to be, I would much rather have the ability to brand like we can here on StreamYard, going live on Instagram than just having 4 people, in squares.
I'm
Yeah.
really hoping that this is just the next step that's getting us closer to being able to use a tool like StreamYard. That it's been you and one other guest for so long that now to be able to have 3 guests and have it in that kind of space, that they're slowly getting there. They are definitely the slowest to evolve on the live streaming. So, but that's really not what their platform was built on. Their platform was not built on live streaming as their main source, but I think that this is kind of the next transition. So hopefully we're getting closer.
So here's what I'm going to play a quick video just to show you all how Instagram Live Rooms works. I mean, this has been out actually since I think May of last year, but it was only like one person at a time. So they've expanded it. They're adding, I think, some shopping capabilities as well. But I'm going to go and bring this up and play this quick video. So as you can see, this is the Instagram Live Rooms feature. A couple things I really like about this, by the way, it's the fact that when someone is in a room, you can see it on their profile. So I think that's going to be really useful. Obviously, you only get 3 people at a time, but they're also are working on some of the shopping capabilities as well with this to help make it easier for people to shop from Instagram Live Rooms. So
Now,
what do y'all think from a business perspective? Good, a lot of good here.
I think so. I think it kind of goes back to, we have this conversation of, it's kind of like, where is your audience,
Mhm.
right? If your audience isn't on Instagram, it doesn't really do you any good to go live. Sure, you'll have some people maybe check it out and that sort of thing, but and I think Kelly Noble Mirabella had posted earlier today, it's okay not to be on every social platform.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, I'm starting to pay a little bit more attention to Instagram. I kind of, it's kind of, I don't say it's a love-hate relationship. It's like, wait, another feature, I'm still trying to figure out Reels, but Agora Pulse just had a great session last week. It's still not too late to sign up and watch the replays, a day of
We're good.
Instagram awesomeness. So I got to go back and watch a couple of those. But it's kind of one of those, if you're a visual business, if you're already on Instagram, it might make sense. You can bring on, a couple more people, have a nice conversation. But then I guess the question is, like, where does it go when it's done, right? Does it go to IGTV? Does it, disappear? I mean, because it's not going to stay in your feed because it's too long. So I think that's the thing sometimes about, you're really not able to necessarily repurpose it. And so I think that's where I see a little bit of the challenge. It's like, why not just, go live using StreamYard, right? Shameless plug, on your YouTube channel, where people are going to search for the topic you're talking about. That's what I think. But I think it's a good feature. I maybe it'll make people engage more on Instagram. It's always like, seems like they're changing the way,
Mhm.
like I guess maybe you're not even supposed to use the feed anymore. I don't know.
I don't know. I remember the very first day they launched live on Instagram. And at the time, my business partner, Jen Cole, and I were sitting at a restaurant outside eating lunch. And we got the word that they had turned on Instagram Live. And so we're like, okay, let's go live. And then we realized that you couldn't do multiple accounts. So like, she's got her phone and I've got my phone, and we're holding at each other and trying to go live together. And it was just a hot mess. And then at the end, she had the option to download her live to save it, but I didn't have the option to download mine. So exactly that, it disappeared, and it was just like, okay, so what was the point of that? Like, I went live and now it's gone. because hers at least went to her story and lived in her story for 24 hours. Mine just vanished.
Mhm.
And so I think that was always one of the tricky parts. And I don't think I ever went live on Instagram again after that, maybe one other time. But I realized that my audience wasn't on Instagram to watch lives. So that was not where I needed to spend my time and have my value, going there, because it wasn't going to be something beneficial to me. But I do think that some of these brands who have really built their following on Instagram, the shopping, the boutiques, especially the visual items, I do think that if there is a spot that live will go live, whether it's IGTV or where it's going to go to where it can be accessed at a later time, there is going to be some value there. It's just going to be a matter of where it's going.
And, I think you make a really good point there. I mean, you talked about whether I'm glad to see Mitchell here getting a lot of value. Jem likes your Twitter Spaces lesson. So thanks a lot for bringing that up. I will say this, I mean, from a Instagram live feature, just, let's just talk social media in general. I mean, you don't have to be on all the platforms. What a lot of people, I guess, maybe when we say, hey, your business should be on social media, it comes down to you should claim your channels, but you don't have to use all of them at once. So start on the ones where your audience is at first, and then build off of that. So, and then that also goes back to your point, Julie, like you mentioned about how like a boutique, for example, if I'm somebody that has a physical product, so I'm not talking, sorry, social media marketers on this. I'm not talking about somebody selling a service, for example, or a coaching session or things like that. I'm talking about somebody that has a physical product. It's a little easier to pick a platform and then to go on that platform and, you have something to always share or talk about, versus if you're just selling a service, for example, it's a lot harder to get people excited about that because you have information basically. And a lot of times most of that information is free potentially. So, there is it's a little bit tricky, I guess, in that sense. So figure out like where your audience is at, and go to that place and hang out there. And maybe you experiment with, 2 other social networks at the same time, but you're not going all in on all the other ones. I realize this has kind of been around, social's been around for a few years, and it has evolved quite a bit, but I still feel like we run into, these challenges, I think, with, it's too, like, I just like to Jim's point, I just started learning something. Now you're adding something else, or, oh, I haven't had time to even start on this platform. Oh, I'm behind. Everyone else is already, they've got 10,000 followers or something like that. So, I like these are really good. I think you all make really good points about this. I mean, I think with Instagram lives, you do need to, again, experiment. Don't go all in necessarily. Figure out where your audience is at and just go there.
I think a lot of it's that FOMO that we all get is we're going, well, there's a new app and everybody's over there. And there's people talking about that they're making money and they're closing deals and they're getting all these new clients. I have got to be there. And then they get over there and suddenly it's not working for them. And then they're frustrated and they're like, social media doesn't work.
Right.
And I'm like, no, that platform was working for them, but they might have been over on another one that wasn't working for them, that they weren't closing all these deals, that they weren't getting all of this new business. And this just happened to be the spot that they found where their audience was hanging out and resonating and where they could build that following. So it's really that. It's don't have that FOMO. Go test it. I say you need to go explore every single one of them when they come out to determine, is it right for you? Is it right for your business? And also, if you get on there and you decide that you just absolutely hate that app, don't force yourself to build an audience there, because you're going to be miserable the whole time. And then you're going to end up just giving it up at some point anyways. So you really have to enjoy the time you're spending there in order to build it right.
That's a great point. Jem, anything else you want to add about Instagram live rooms?
No, I think it's definitely, to your point, I think it's worth experimenting with. It's that kind of that whole thing, like, like you said, theoretically, we could have a phone set up here and you could invite us all in and we could be like kind of doing social chefs without all the nice banner stuff on Instagram where they're just hearing us talk at the same time we're on these other channels. But I think I could see where there's some value there, but it goes back to, is your audience really going to resonate? Because I tended to be like Julie. The couple times I'd go live on there, it'd be more like, hey guys, I'm just letting you know this, that, or the other, and because I didn't know if anybody was going to even watch. So, so yeah, having someone to talk to, or a couple more people to talk to might make it a little bit more fun.
So we have a question here real quick from NLTMW here, and he's asking, how do you feel about the new trend of over promoting private betas when the vast majority can't access it? And
I call that FOMO.
Clubhouse, sort of. Yeah.
I call it FOMO. They're generating excitement and people like, oh, I don't want to, like you said, Christian, about the fear of missing out, because they want people, to know that this is coming, right? And so then people, what's been interesting though with Clubhouse is, I mean, people have actually paid for, invites, and it's like, really, wow, I didn't know it was you were that desperate, but yeah, so it does create the, it's that whole scarcity mindset. Oh, I wish I could have that. How do I get that? And it's maybe not the greatest tactic, but it is a marketing, a way to market something. So it's they're going to allow it. There's, you don't have to like it, but there are people that are going to, it's kind of like when a new product's coming out, like when the Oculus Quest 2, like, oh, I got to get that. And then it's hard to get. I mean, we see it all the time, right? Every holiday season, there's this new item that the kids got to have. And like, I remember, you guys might've been kids then, Tickle Me Elmo, when that came out, that thing was going for hundreds of dollars. And then if you just waited, it was back to like, I don't know, $20.
I worked at Toys R Us the year of the Furby. That was terrifying to work there. That was my post-high school job, was the year of the Furby at Toys R Us.
Yep. And even when you see what's happened with items like at the beginning of, and I think it still goes back and forth. The Logitech C920 was going for a couple $100 on eBay and other places because it wasn't available. So I mean, it kind of goes back to the, economics of supply and demand in my eyes.
Yeah. I mean, the key thing, with something like that is you have to create the demand for a product. Like, you can't just launch something. Like, here's the thing. If I'm a really large, company, like let's use Apple as an example. Apple comes out with their phones or their tablets. They do it once a year typically, or, a handful of times throughout the year, but they do events centered around that. So that's to get people talking about it. And then the way their model works is it's press. It's certain bloggers, for example, of really big sites that are constantly talking about like Apple products, for example. And so they're able to experience that, to learn more about the product, and then they ship it a very short amount of time after the fact. They sometimes will demo a product they're working on, but very rarely do they do that. But that's also, here's the thing, they're a large company. So if you're going to try to do the same thing and you're like, hey, I'm just going to have this event, or I'm just going to, I'm not going to say anything beforehand and I'm just going to drop it. Like, chances are people are not going to know about it. So it's going to make, it's that whole like analogy about a tree falling in the forest. Like, it's the same thing. Like, if you're a really small business and you have no one really helping you, help get the word out, when you do drop or launch a new product, it's not necessarily going to get the traction. So in this case, this one got traction because you got people behind it. Clubhouse, for example, had celebrities behind it, and it's been around for well over a year. It didn't have any traction at that point, but
NLTMW brings up a great point. Is some people, like, they've been waiting, and now that they weren't able to get it, and now Twitter's made it much easier to get.
Yeah.
That's an opportunity cost for Clubhouse, because now people might say, you know what, I really don't need to get to Clubhouse that bad. I'm just going to stick on Twitter Spaces. And that's that whole thing, right, of being in business, right? When you launch something, you got to be prepared for what happens if it actually goes well, right? And you do have these problems. I think Shark Tank is great in the aspect of, you see these people bring products on that they got to have the sharks help them, because all of a sudden, like, oh my gosh, I can't handle the demand.
Yeah.
I mean, even when you look at StreamYard and how it's grown as a company and as a product, right? I mean, at first it was basically just Gage and Dan, right, doing all this stuff on their own. Now they've got, I don't know, how many people are you guys up to now? Like 20, 30 people?
Probably getting close to 30, I think.
Yeah. And, acquired by another company, but continuing to grow. So that's, sometimes, like, when people, it's like, hey, let's, or like these people that all of a sudden create a craft beer or something, like, oh my gosh, now people actually like it and want more of it. What do we do? So I think that's part of the challenge, and people have to have money sometimes to make these things expand. So I think that's where Clubhouse hasn't monetized itself other than getting investors. And I think maybe that's why they've had that challenge of getting, because there's still people say, well, say like, if we all are able to get shots by the summer, is Clubhouse going to be as big a deal? Because people can get out and actually talk to people. So, or will it stick around? I think, the people that were on Blab want to know.
Yeah. Well, and Laura makes a point here. She says she has over demand and undersupply problems, and she feels like she's riding a unicycle as a solo person. And here's the thing: I mean, that is very possible if you're a solopreneur, for example, trying to grow a business. And so some of those easy, I don't say easy, but easier lifts would be if you need, for example, help. That's where you go on sites like Fiverr or other websites, for example, and you hire somebody to help you with some of that. So they help you with, for example, some of the tasks. If you're, for example, if you're the linchpin, basically, and so you go hire somebody to do some of those tasks that will help you ship the product faster. And then as your business grows, then you can consider bringing on actual employees. So somebody that can take 40 hours a week. Also, you start to outsource some of the tasks so that you can continue moving things along. The biggest thing that a lot of people run into is they take on too much and they get to the point where things slow down because, it's like carrying weights, basically. You start out with like, oh, I'm carrying 5 pounds and I'm walking and that's not a problem. And then as you're stacking more things, it gets to the point where it's so slow because you're carrying too many things. So you need to lighten your load, basically.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. Jem, do we have time for one more topic, or we want to just move to questions for Julie?
I think the next topic we could go through fairly quickly, because I think it's goes back to, we've been talking about Twitter. I think this is another great thing to talk about. So Twitter is actually looking into getting into shopping, right? So you can actually shop from a tweet. I mean, it makes sense, right? Facebook started out with shop, or I should say, I don't know which came first, Facebook but you've got shopping on Instagram. You got shopping on a lot of these other platforms. And so if this allows businesses to monetize, right? Like, okay, I mean, I don't know how it works, but theoretically, I could put a link out there for some product that I have access to, and people could buy it straight off of Twitter, right? It's, I don't know if it's going to charge you for this feature or if it's just going to be, hey, we're allowing people to have a shop button. So I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think if anything, right, sometimes it's that you're searching and it's like, oh, look at this. Here's in this case, it looks like, a cam link, right? I need that. Boom, bought. And so I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, people are looking for easier ways to shop, and I think that it makes sense for them to look into this because, they had a very profitable last quarter. They're continuing to grow. So if they want investors to keep investing, they're a publicly traded company. They have to keep developing. And so I think it's interesting. I'm sure some folks that have been around Twitter for a long time, it's like probably saying, why did it take so long for them to all of a sudden like start doing things? Because I think for a while they seemed like they were just, people complain like, how about an edit button, Twitter? Come on, let's, you're going to do shopping, but we still can't edit a tweet.
Yes, that has been, I think, probably one of the longest growing gripes of Twitter. But they kind of got stagnant for a while there. There wasn't much evolution happening. I mean, the biggest change that happened was, you could go a higher character count. And man, that was like, there were people that were actually really against that when it happened. And so it's interesting to see suddenly that they're going, you know what? We need to make some changes. We need to add some new products. I'm excited about the shopping feature. I'm pretty sure my wallet just went and hid in the other room. It ran far away. I like being able to see products that I'm interested in. And go, you know what, that is something. No, I don't necessarily need it, but it is something I like. My lights behind me, my blue lights, those were a Facebook purchase on Facebook shopping from an ad I got served that I had already kind of been knowing I wanted to spruce up the background.
Mm-hmm.
And I got served the ad at the right time that I was like, click, I will buy.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, just to see that, they're testing the shopping feature. I mean, I still think like there probably needs to be a way to potentially label some of the content a little bit better. So for example, because it can easily, get to the point where all people are putting out are just shop links because they're trying to generate some, I would love to see, maybe there's a way to somehow tag those. I do like that little purple dot they added for Twitter Spaces. So like maybe there's, icons that can be added, maybe a little shopping bag or something. Not sure, but I like the fact that Twitter's potentially getting into this. I think as a business, Twitter's making some good moves right now. Remember, they're a publicly traded company, so they're beholden to their shareholders. So they do have to try to figure out ways to, increase their revenue. And so in this case, I mean, these are, some other ways that they can do that. I like that they're finally taking some action here. That's the key thing.
Absolutely.
So really good job here. Okay. So what we're going to do here real quick, we're going to switch to a couple of questions for Julie. Jem, do you happen to have those handy?
I do.
Maybe we want to start with the first one.
I do. So Julie, what are some other types of bonus content businesses and influencers can create for their audience? There any tools that can help make this process easier?
So for me, my number one tool I use when managing all of my accounts is Agorapulse. I love the ability to go in there and send out my content, schedule it. I can put it in as queued content, so it will constantly cycle through. So that is like my simplistic tool as far as getting it all scheduled and managing it, and being able to also have content like over on Twitter that cycles through at a certain time in a certain way. Some of the others, though, that are going to help you create some of this content are some of the ones that are going to be able to take and repurpose your content. So later, for example, you can take your live video after it's done, you import it into later, it's going to transcribe it, and then it's going to break this live video down into little bite-sized video clips that you can go through and edit the copy that's on them. You can edit exactly where the clip is at, and then you schedule it all out. So you're taking one piece of content and you can turn it into a blog, into bite-sized videos. You can tweet them. You can put them on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, wherever your audience is, and be able to use all of those. If you are a Pinterest user, Tailwind is my favorite one for over on Pinterest in order to maximize your time and your efficiency. Because at the end of the day, I can't go purchase time. I get 24 hours in a day, and I do like to sleep. So the time is the one thing I can't go get more of. So any way I can use to maximize my time and to do less effort, but still get the maximum amount of exposure and work is really what I'm looking for.
Agree with that 100%. And do you want me to go on to question 2, Christian?
Well, I mean, just real quick. I mean, regarding the, just like, I think the key thing here is people need to work smarter, not harder at what they're doing. And, it may seem like, oh, well, hey, that tool charges, like, for example, lately, I know, Jem, you've used it. I know I've used it. Julie, I know you use it. I mean, it's pretty awesome. You basically can take your video, instead of having, like, for example, you have to look at where your strengths are at. So, for example, if you're not somebody that is, I don't say adept, but if you're not very good at going through a video and quickly creating those segments, for example, try out the tool, see how much time it can save you. Look at how much it would take you to do that on your own, and what you're giving up, because there's always an opportunity cost here, by the way. So it's what you're giving up to get yourself ahead. So for example, if that tool is costing, I don't know what lately cost a month, but let's say it's like $100 a month, and you value your time at $150 an hour, and you're taking, 2 hours of time just to go through one video, that tool can save you a lot of time. So definitely, it goes back to what Julie said earlier, and both what Jem said as well. Experiment. You have to test out some tools. So look at the areas where you're spending the most time and see if there's a way to either speed that up or to make it work faster. I mean, you want basically, you talk about pipes and things like that. Like, you want to set up a very smooth, like, process to where everything just flows directly, versus, okay, hey, it has to go here and here and here and here and here and here and all these other places. You want to make things as smooth as possible. It's going to create less stress and make it a lot easier on you to grow your business.
Yeah.
So, Jem, second question for Julie.
Yeah. So what are some alternatives, Julie, to Twitter's super followers to monetize your Twitter or your social media presence for that matter?
Ooh, that's a tough one. So I think it really depends on what you're trying to monetize. If you have a built-in community, I'll use Andrew and Pete's Atomic membership, for example. That is signed up through their website. There is tons of content behind a locked door that you have to be a member to get access to. But then you also get access to their Facebook group, which is now where you can have the conversations. I know a lot of masterminds do this, where you're paying to be a part of that member, and then you get access to the private group. So these are those kinds of avenues and areas where you can start to go, okay, I'm going to set up private trainings within a group, or within, if you're still overusing Zoom, whatever it is that you're using, and set these up. You can set them behind these locked passwords, access through websites, and then give them access to the groups or to those kinds of areas. And then it's really looking at all the different ways that you can generate revenue for your brand, for your business, whether it is the Twitter super chats or the monetized Facebook groups. So, and knowing where is your audience going to go?
Definitely. Yeah. And and the key thing here, is just the fact that, obviously, you can try out the Twitter super follows feature, but, it, again, goes back to the same point. If you're not having fun, for example, on that platform, your audience isn't there. Like, why are you going to keep banging your head against the wall trying to make it work when it really just may not be the right place or the right thing? And the thing is, there are lots of options out there. So you've got Twitter super follows. So for example, if you've not got an audience on Twitter, but hey, you've got one on YouTube, try to build that YouTube audience up. Then you can use the YouTube super chats feature, for example, and then you could go back to Twitter, or you could start to talk up your Twitter channel on your YouTube channel and talk about what's the value someone's going to get if they go connect with you there, and you don't want to make them the same as well. So I don't want to go to your YouTube channel and your Twitter account and get the same exact information. Yeah. Anything else you want to add there, Julie?
I was going to say, it'll be interesting also, since they're adding in this super chats feature, if they decide to take an integration with this and also turn it into their Twitter spaces. So then only your paid members can get access to those conversations. So that would be something that if I was Twitter, I would be looking at and considering.
And in addition to that, I know just a couple of weeks ago, Twitter bought a tool called Review, which lets you create a newsletter. So maybe we're going to see a paid community at some point here of sorts with some of these tools. I think they make a lot of sense when you start to look at all the pieces that are there. You've got the Twitter platform and you've got all these other tools that are helping you monetize. I think I still go back to Jem's point. Something happened at Twitter. They woke up and all of a sudden now they're actually finally doing something. For the longest time, we've been like, hey, you're not doing anything. I don't know, something happened. So this is good. Really good news. Okay. So lastly, what we'll do is we want to talk about two tools this week, real quickly with you. And these are tools that can help you grow your business, or, just get better at doing things a lot faster. So Jem, what tool do you want to start with first?
Yeah, let's start with Dubb. Dubb is a pretty interesting tool. I've received emails from a couple people that use Dubb, and it's basically another one of these tools where you're able to create a video and then send it embedded in an email, and so you're giving someone, a video conversation in a sense to start out with. They're able to respond to you. It's and I really was thought it was really interesting. They do have a free version. Of course, there's a lot of others out there. There's Vidyard, there's Bonbon, there's I'm sure there's a couple others I'm missing that you guys are probably aware of. But I think this is a solid tool. I've got the free version. I haven't really used it. I'm still debating how I want to go about in a sense, because even a program like Loom or I think it's screen. What we talked about last week, was it screen cast-o-matic or
Screencast-o-matic? Yeah.
Yeah, you can also record videos and put them in the email. So I think it's kind of, what makes the most sense for you. But I think this is a good tool, definitely worth checking out. I think the landing page option can be somewhat powerful, because have somebody watch a video and then it takes them to a landing page. That may be a difference from some of the others as well. But yeah, I like it. I think kind of debate. It's like, do I want to go in on Dubb, or keep using what I have? Because as we know, Christian's really bad about giving you all these tools, and then then you get tool FOMO.
So what do you think, Julie? Is this something you'd use, or is there an alternative you'd consider?
Yeah, so I've used one of the other versions that Jim mentioned previously. And I think, again, it's going to depend on what you're using it for. If you send every single email to your email following with a video, chances are they're going to stop watching them. They're going to be like, okay, it's just another video. It's, I'm busy. I'm not at a place where I can listen to it. But if you have certain things, certain messages that you're trying to relay, those are the times to send those out. We used it, for instance, as a membership community that was a paid membership community. We would send them a welcome video explaining, saying hello, who we were. Here's your first steps. Go join the community. Go jump on the welcome post. Here is some other information for you. You're going to find in the email copy the links to go watch past recordings and past trainings. So it was giving them kind of that introductory welcome message. And we found that those were much more well received versus a text email. But we also then followed up with text emails later. We didn't send them a message every single time. And those were actually interesting, because we would send a personalized one. I didn't record one message saying welcome and send it. I recorded it and say, hey, Jim, welcome to the community. I'm so excited you're here. And here's what you need to know. And so it was very personalized for every single user.
So one thing I would add real quick before we switch to the other tool is just the fact that, and I talked about this quite a bit, like I love email autoresponders. So for example, instead of just like having someone go to your website, sign up for your email, and then they get that initial link like, hey, click here to confirm, and then they have to wait for you to send emails. Why not? This is the working smarter, not harder aspect. Why not set up an autoresponder for every single person that, when they first join your email list? It could be 5 emails, it could be 10 emails, and it's 1 email a day with a very specific topic. So it could be maybe that first thing they're going to get is a video of you in that email. So for example, I create that video, I drop that in my autoresponder. So then that way, as Jem gets the first email, he can actually see who he's working with. So then, that goes on to the next ones. Okay, well, like next email might be like, hey, what are some of your pain points, or what can I help you with? Third email might be like, hey, here's our social media channels that we have that we want you to join or encourage you to join us on. And then maybe the fourth one is like, hey, if you have any questions, here's the best way to reach us. So this way you're not overusing a video feature. And then the great thing about this, when you have it in the autoresponder, is Jem gets that first email, and maybe like 4 days later, he's on to the 4th email. Julie signs up on the 4th day. She's getting the first email. So it's a system that works. And, it also helps get you out there as well. So people like to see who they are communicating with. And this is a great way to personalize that information.
Yeah.
So the second tool that we had for you this week as well, Jem, what's this tool?
It's called Shortcuts FM.
What does it do?
Well, it looks like it gives you some keyboard shortcuts for all your favorite Mac apps. And of course, I looked at some of them. I'm like, I don't know if I have time to learn all this stuff. But I think for some people, and I think you're a big shortcuts person, if you have the time and the patience to learn shortcuts, I think I get into like a habit of like, okay, I know how to do this stuff. I'll just do it the way I've done it, because I don't want to have to learn another shortcut. But I think for people that like this, I think it's a great tool.
Julie, what do you think? Do you use any shortcuts to save time?
I don't, because I end up spending more time looking for the shortcut to save the time than I would have. But I know people who do use them and love them. I have in the past, when I was working a lot in Photoshop, I actually bought a keyboard cover that had all the Photoshop ones on it. So at least that I was looking directly down at it. But generally, I'm not a shortcut user just because I don't remember them all, and then I spend more time looking for them.
So I will say this, just a couple of tools that we've talked about. I know we've talked so this is a free tool. They don't have all the ones there, obviously, but Facebook, for example, Facebook has keyboard shortcuts. So if you want to do certain things, there are certain, there actually is a screen you can pull up, which will allow you to quickly access the Facebook keyboard shortcuts. Agora Pulse also has keyboard shortcuts as well. So, I look at it like this. I mean, to Jem's point, like, yeah, we get sort of set in our ways, but it is sort of also muscle memory. So like, if you start to get to if you get used to using certain shortcuts, just remember a lot of times they actually translate across one app and into another one. Definitely, I recommend trying to learn some shortcuts because they do help. Like, for example, if you're doing video editing, it's fantastic to you can put the option over top your keyboard, but you can also just learn some of the ones that are there. A lot of times the keyboard, the keys are actually placed, for example, right next to one another. Like in Final Cut, if you want to use certain keys, there's the J, K, and L key, and they move things forward, they move things backward, and so forth. So they kind of try to make them smarter shortcuts, but they definitely can save you a little bit of time, and then a lot of time over time. So and then Nancy Lewis Hill says, muscle memory, got to use a few till it's autopilot. And it's going to seem weird at first, but I swear by shortcuts. Yeah. And shortcuts in the sense that these are keyboard shortcuts, not like taking shortcuts to get me completely ahead. So awesome. Well, so those are the two tools we have for you, and that's all the topics we have. Julie, just a couple of quick questions for you. What's the best place for people to get in touch with you? I know I have your Twitter handle, but is there a better place?
Well, the Twitter handle is my social handle on all social platforms. So
Awesome.
You can find me anywhere at Social Jules ICT. And so that is TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. I believe even if you search that on Facebook, it'll come up. So LinkedIn, I am at Social Jules ICT. And that is the best way to get in touch with me.
And Jem, what's the best place for people to reach you?
Yeah, I think as well for me, Twitter at Fusion Marketing, FUHS ION MKTG, or LinkedIn Jim Fuhs is probably the two easiest. Those are probably where I'm the most active at the moment, but easiest way to connect. And love connecting with people and seeing what we can do to help each other grow our businesses.
Fantastic. So I want to thank everybody for joining us, especially you, Julie, for just taking time out of your day to chat about, Twitter super follows, Instagram live rooms, Twitter e-commerce capabilities, and obviously Jem for the Twitter Spaces demo. I mean, it's so weird saying Twitter and social media news because we got to the point where Twitter really wasn't doing a whole lot. So it's really good to see, to hear all about this coming from Twitter. But I want to thank everybody for joining us. Again, we're going to have a blog post recap. It goes out over the weekend, socialchefs.com/SC281. But we will see you all next Thursday. We're going to be joined by Dorian Morin Van Dam. She's going to join us at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on youtube.com/socialchefs and facebook.com/socialchefs. Hope to see you all there. Thanks a lot, everyone, for tuning in.
Bye.